we're going to announce the Edinburgh Decentralization Index, talk about it, but basically it's just a concept of how do you measure decentralization. Because I am goddamn tired of being in an industry where every single person says, we're decentralized. We're decentralized. What the fuck does it mean? We don't have a way of measuring it. It's like saying we're performant, we're fast. You know, we have this, we have this. These are just puffery. These are just words. And the problem is that decentralization is a measurement of resilience. It's a measurement of control. It's a measurement of reliability. And it is incumbent in the way that protocols are designed. Each and every one of you are building protocols or building on top of protocols. This is a necessary piece of information for you to assess whether what you've constructed is a house of cards or it's something that can stand the test of time, like those forests as they rebuild. Wouldn't it be nice for the industry to come together and just figure it out? Well, I got tired of waiting. I told everybody this back in 2015, 2016, 2017, and it's just like Thanos with the gauntlet. Fine, I'll do it myself. I said, all right, let's just create a lab. So that's what we did. And then we told the CFTC and others, and they said, boy, that sounds really useful. We need something like that. Can you give it to us? Probably will end up being the way of determining sufficiently decentralized, the difference between a security and a commodity in our industry. Just that simple. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Play one on TV. You know, I'm not particularly qualified to measure the level of decentralization of a cryptocurrency. So what I did is I hired a great team of people, of lawyers, of cryptographers, of distributed systems people, and found a great partner, the University of Edinburgh, to do it, brought them together and said, go do it, here's some money. And now it's objective and neutral because it's embedded within a university, and they'll start with Bitcoin and work their way down. And it's a tool that we in the industry can now use as a steer. Why did we need it? Because if you're in charge, you're running the members-based organization, people are going to come to each and every one of you as ADA voters and ask you to embrace protocol XYZ versus protocol ABC. Great example will be input endorsers. We're going to announce all the SIPs towards the end of the year, likely at the conference, the big Cardano summit. There will be implications, positive ones. For example, the throughput of the system will go up significantly. We'll have lots more TPS, actually for Cardano, TPT transactions per transaction. Great. But it's a fair question to ask, does the existence of a system like this centralize or decentralize Cardano? Simple question. And what objective metric do we have to answer that? You as voters, you as people in control, need to have tools that you trust in the back of your pocket to be able to do that. So I gave you one for free, the EDI, the Edinburgh Decentralization Index, but there need to be others. And you have to build them. Everybody is equal in that respect. That's why these events are so important. They're great opportunities for you to meet each other. They're great opportunities for you to collaborate with each other, but they're also great opportunities to get philosophical, because this is one of the few venues where you really have the right and obligation to do so. You have to think carefully about what are the questions we ought to ask? What's the culture we ought to have? And you notice something, if you do that a lot, you're not talking about people, you're talking about ideas. You're talking about the future. You're talking about good governance. That is what differentiates us from everyone else. And that is what is going to mean we're going to be around in 50 years or 100 years or 200 years. This nation was a great example of it. When our founding fathers won a really brutal, horrible war against the most powerful country in the world, as a ragtag group of rebels, they earned the right to do whatever the hell they wanted to do. And they had a brief window of time to think about what should they do. Instead of arguing over who was going to be king, arguing over how they could make peace with France and England, instead of arguing over how to chop up the spoils of war, which is usually what happens after you win a big war, they got philosophical. They went as far back as ancient Greece. They were quoting Thucydides. They were talking about the Athenian democracy. They were talking about the Roman Republic. Imagine that. No internet. Must have been a boring time. You know, and all these people just sitting in a room trying to figure out how do we build something that will last a totality of time, hundreds of years, thousands of years, and be an inspiration to the entire world on how to do things differently. And everybody thought they were batshit crazy. They said, oh, that'll never work, it'll fail. And then the French Revolution happened, and Europe was getting real scared about it. They said, wait, hang on a second here, guys. We thought you weren't serious. And they did change the world. Look how powerful America is today, and look at all the blessings we've gotten from where it got. Now, did we continue to reinforce that philosophical thought? Not really. We allowed ourselves to become too comfortable with the decisions that were made in the past, which brings me up to my next point, which is everything ought to be mercilessly examined and re-examined and discussed. Every design decision IOHK made, every design decision Agalos made, Duncan made, I made, it was good for a moment in time, but it doesn't mean it's permanent. The K factor, other things. The point of the SIP process, the members-based org that's coming, is so that you have the mechanisms and means to every year and say what is still true and what ought to change. This is why blockchain-based governance is so important, and frankly, it is the key differentiator between us and everyone else. Others say it's too hard, or they say, well, we should just hand the keys to 5 people and they'll figure it all out, these enlightened philosophers and scholars. It's a lot harder to say, I trust you. Goes back to the cynicism, point number 1. If you're cynical, you can't trust people. You think everybody's stupid. You think everybody's incapable of doing things, that people can't rise to the occasion. You're conditioned and trained to look at people with disgust, doubt. But if you believe in people, you're optimistic, if you actually think people, if given a shot, will do great things and enable others to do great things, you'll actually trust those people enough to reevaluate every single design decision you made, for better or for worse, fully accepting that they could fuck it up. And they have to have the right to do that. Every generation has to have the right to end all of it and do something different. Because that's what freedom's about. And every now and then, the people that come after you, turns out, are smarter than you. It's a pretty magical thing. Look at the events you guys put on versus the ones I put on. They're fun. You know, it was great going to Vegas. It's great coming here. I can't wait to see the exhibition area and see what you guys have. I didn't invent any of this. You came up with this. And apply this towards a governance stack. That's pretty cool. So people often ask, what's the role for I.O. moving forward? What do we do? Are we leaving? Are we staying? Well, we'd like to stay. That's your choice. The other thing is that we have a lot more contributions to make, and there's many things we can do now that there's a stable ecosystem to go above and beyond what we started with. I was real worried about plumbing, the wires that go underground. I was real worried about the things people couldn't see, like decentralization and protocol design and all this stuff, and we've done a damn good job with it. 150 plus papers, millions of lines of code, and obviously the system works. Believe it or not, you can even stake without locking your funds. Go figure. That's a novel concept, right? Just don't tell Team Green about that. They haven't figured it out yet. They'll get the memo at some point. Somebody else has to tell them, though. So that's great, but wouldn't it be nice to have 1 billion users? Wouldn't it be nice to actually be the financial operating system of the world? Wouldn't it be nice to have people in every single country using your stuff and my stuff, and Cardano is an actual protocol like TCP/IP? It's ubiquitous in that respect. That's what I'd like to spend the next 5 or 10 years thinking about.